Welcome to this explainer. As a professional researcher diving into the neurobiology of our daily habits, I've got to tell you, the data strongly suggests we need to completely reevaluate the waking brain. It's not just some simple machine powering on in the morning. No, it is a highly receptive biological instrument that requires precise calibration. Because those very first moments of consciousness, they are quietly programming your brain for the entire rest of the day. And you know what's fascinating, and honestly a little alarming? It's what the data shows most of us actually do with this incredible instrument. In those very first moments of consciousness, before you've even fully opened your eyes, your brain is in an extraordinarily receptive neurological state. Yet what do most people do? We mentally rehearsed our stressful to-do lists, we suddenly remember an embarrassing mistake from 5 years ago, or we grab our phones, check the time, and immediately feel behind. We've all been there, right? But without even knowing it, we are wasting this super receptive state and unknowingly recording a negative emotional template for everything that follows.
So fixing this really boils down to just one number, 15. The critical window to effectively rewire your brain for happiness doesn't require an hour of deep meditation. It takes only the first 15 seconds after you wake up. What you do in this tiny, fleeting fraction of time literally sets your emotional baseline for the day.
To optimize this, we're going to walk through a highly specific 5-step biological protocol. We'll cover the theta-alpha window, circadian system light calibration, prefrontal cortex thought protection, activating the neuroplastic window, and finally, the micro-movement trigger. Okay, let's jump right into step 1, the theta-alpha window. So what exactly is the theta to alpha transition window? It's the brief period immediately after waking where the brain locks in its emotional baseline for the following hours. And what's truly wild here is the sheer speed of this transition. It only lasts a few minutes. If you enter a stressed state during this window, your brain locks that in as your baseline with remarkable efficiency. But if you consciously enter a positive state, it locks that in instead. This window slams shut incredibly fast, which is exactly why those first 15 seconds are absolutely crucial. And that brings us right to our first action, the 15-second positive sensory anchor. The protocol dictates that the second you become aware you're awake, before you stretch, before you start thinking about your day, you deliberately recall one specific, concrete, positive sensory memory. We are not talking about a vague, abstract thought here, but a real physical sensation. The exact warmth of a hug, the sound of rain hitting a window, or the physical feeling of finally finishing a project you were super proud of. You just hold on to that specific sensory memory for 15 full seconds. Why does this matter biologically? Well, when you hold that positive anchor, your brain releases a quick rush of serotonin and dopamine. As researcher Dr. Barbara Fredrickson at the University of North Carolina documented in her broaden and build theory, positive emotional states physically expand the range of information your brain processes. These states don't just feel nice, they make your brain objectively better at thinking clearly and finding solutions all day long. Moving right along, let's look at step 2, circadian system light calibration. Deep inside your brain, you have this amazing mechanism called the suprachiasmatic nucleus. Think of it as the master clock of your entire circadian system. It's reset and calibrated by the very first light signal it receives every morning. This single biological calibration directly controls the timing of your serotonin production, your dopamine sensitivity, and your cortisol rhythm for the entire day. It literally runs the show. Based on extensive research documented by neuroscientist Andrew Huberman at Stanford, the action here is highly specific to trigger that perfect alertness and emotional stability. After a 15-second anchor, you need to seek natural outdoor light immediately. You want a minimum of 30 seconds, ideally up to 2 minutes, with your open eyes directed towards the sky. No sunglasses. And critically, no glass windows blocking the light. If you stay in the dark or just use artificial indoor light, you are disrupting your rhythms right from the get-go. Let's transition to the third biological window, prefrontal cortex thought protection. This step targets what is probably the single most damaging automatic habit modern adults have developed. For the first 5 minutes after waking, your prefrontal cortex, your brain's rational filter, is essentially offline. If you check your phone immediately, you bypass those normal filtering systems and all that incoming info lands directly in your emotional processing centers with a disproportionately huge impact. Conversely, if you just protect those first 5 minutes, you allow that prefrontal cortex filter to fully come online so you can process information normally. And this isn't just theory, folks. Researchers at the University of British Columbia found exactly this. checking phones within the first 5 minutes of waking is associated with significantly higher stress, a lower mood, and a reduced sense of control for hours afterwards. And here's the kicker. This happens regardless of what was actually on your screen. The mere act of checking the phone triggers an immediate stress response, not necessarily the content itself.
Let's move on to step 4, activating the neuroplastic window.
During these first few minutes of full wakefulness, your brain is transitioning from its overnight consolidation phase into active encoding mode. Because of this, it's measurably more receptive to forming new neural connections than at almost any other time of day. So the action here is the 10-second verbal declaration. Saying one genuine sentence out loud during this highly receptive window actually creates stronger, more lasting neural traces than speaking those exact same words later in the afternoon. The protocol is super simple but precise. Speak one true sentence out loud about how you want to move through your day. It takes less than 10 seconds. Research into morning verbal rituals shows that doing this consistently measurably changes your default mode network activity within just 2 weeks. Specifically, it significantly reduces those spontaneous negative self-referential thoughts that drive low mood and anxiety. Now for our final piece of the protocol. Step 5, the micro-movement trigger. This is the crucial step that takes those first 4 habits from simply being good to being biologically extraordinary. To understand why, we need to define BDNF, or brain-derived neurotrophic factor. This is a protein released during brief bursts of vigorous physical movement. Neuroscientists literally describe BDNF as fertilizer for your brain. It promotes neuroplasticity, meaning this mental fertilizer physically and permanently wires in that sensory anchor, your verbal declaration, and that awesome positive morning emotional state. And the results are incredibly durable. A University of Vermont study found that just 60 seconds of vigorous movement, like doing jumping jacks or running in place to spike your heart rate, produces mood improvements that last an average of 12 hours. Just let that sink in for a second. 60 seconds of effort gives you 12 whole hours of elevated cognitive and emotional function. Now that is a massive return on investment. So let's synthesize this whole protocol into one continuous sequence. First, the 15-second sensory anchor right as you wake. Second, morning light calibration. Third, thought protection, keeping off that phone. Fourth, a 10-second verbal declaration. And finally, 60 seconds of vigorous movement. Stacking these elements is the complete, synthesized formula that leads to maximum BDNF release and optimal brain calibration. And here is the precise, minute-by-minute biological timeline we've been unpacking. Minute 0, you lock in the positive sensory anchor. By minute 2, you're exposing your eyes for natural light calibration. Up through minute 5, you are rigorously executing prefrontal cortex protection, and by minute 6, you're deploying that BDNF micro-movement trigger. This is pure scientific precision applied directly to your morning routine. Which leaves us with this final thought. Understanding the research as an observer is one thing. Actually applying it to your life is another. Tomorrow morning, your waking brain will enter its most highly receptive state. Your next 15 seconds of waking consciousness will literally program your day. So the question is, how will you use them?